Hi, everybody. My name is Catherine Lancioni of Presenting Perfection, and I'm joined today by Jessica Bush of the Tutor Doctor. And we're here for another installment of the education conversation. So today we wanted to talk about the back to school transition for kids in both public and private schools. And we wanted to talk about what's working and more importantly, what's not working. So Jessica, what are you seeing on your end for the kids
Hi,
going back to school?
everybody. Well, now that the kids are back in school, which I'm a big fan of, in person and back in school, I think what's happening is, from what I'm hearing from the kids, they're back in and they're not used to it anymore. And they're used to less work, less tests, less pressure, and they're not used to it. And I think that they are really getting stressed out. Um, Testing requirements are back, which I'll talk to you all about in a little while. But um, it's a struggle, and now they're stressed by a different aspect of being back in school. They're happy to be back. They've got their socialization, but now we're thrown back into more work again, and they're not used to it.
Oh, completely agree with you. As a parent of two teenagers, it was always my concern that the going back to the in-person classroom was going to be tough. And my kids were hybrid last year, so they were, in the classroom about half the week on average. And it's been real tough. Teachers are trying to slowly transition, but they don't seem to understand how slow they need to go. And it's putting a lot of pressure on kids who, for the past 18 months, they've had other pressures, but they haven't had necessarily academic pressure to deal with. And I think
Yep.
it's making it
Yeah.
really, really hard for kids, really hard.
Yeah. And I'm sitting with kids who now, you know, the one student from Ridgewood, I was saying, very bright boy. And during COVID, his GPA, high school student, his GPA dropped from into the threes to now into the twos. And he took a practice ACT and he's up there. I mean, he's up there. He got a very high reading score with absolutely no prep, nothing. And I said to him, look, you are a very smart kid. And I said, what happened? He said, I just didn't submit anything. And I said, why did you do that? And he said, it's almost as though he didn't care. And I think that whole year of COVID was almost like a surreal year for everybody, but a lot of kids. And they just thought, this is hopeless and I feel helpless and I'm just not going to submit anything.
It's devastating. It really is. It's
And
devastating.
it really hurt him because now we have to pull him up. But I said to him, your essays for your common application, your college applications are going to be so much more important because you need to describe what happened to you and you need to be open and honest because back in sophomore year he had a 3 point something and
Wow.
now he doesn't. So you have to describe that. You have to talk about what happened. I think it's really, really important.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the essay this year, especially in situations like that, is going to be incredibly difficult. It's always important, but I think this year it's going to be really important for a lot of kids. And I think it's also the case, there's the question, every school so far seems to still be test optional except for one that I know of. And, it's unclear whether or not that's going to continue beyond this year. And I think there's merit to it continuing because I think it's very helpful to students. But the flip side of that is, if you're applying to a school and your test score falls below the middle 50%, do you submit it or not? And, what we've heard in talking to a lot of different college people is that if you're below it, you shouldn't admit it because it's a piece of evidence by which the school can decide not to take you.
Yes or no. It's
Right.
absolutely.
Right. And in
And
that,
that's what I'm telling families. I literally am sitting with families, and if their practice test scores come below a certain amount, I'm actually advising them not to invest in test prep.
yeah.
Other people may disagree with me, but I can tell you if it's below the national average or way below, and especially in our area of New Jersey, everybody looks at me when I say the national average is a 1020 or 1030. They look at me like that's like devastating, but that's the national average, or it was the last time we looked at it. And um, if it comes in below 1,000, for us to get your student even up 100, 200 points is submit, like you said, is submitting that score going to help their entire application package, or is it going to actually hurt them?
Well, that's right. And it depends, you know, it really depends upon the school. And so what we've been advised is you have to look school by school. You know, the Common App is wonderful
Yeah,
because you write one
absolutely.
essay, although many schools have supplementals. But in terms of that ACT or SAT score, you really only should submit it if you fall in that middle 50%. So rather than, you know, when the testing bureau asks you to give you the school codes to report, it's not just some like random thing, haphazard thing that you do. You literally
Right.
have to sit and look at that average 50% range for each school and then decide whether or not to submit it. Now, here's the other interesting part of this discussion is most schools aren't really, to have a proper average, you need a 75% submission of test scores from applicants. What's happening is a lot of schools are barely getting to 50%, let alone to 75. So that average 50% mark can be misleading.
Changing.
Right, right. So what you have to look at is like the flip side. If the average 50% score is, say, on the ACT, I'm making this up, between a 22 and a 25, and only 45% of the kids reported, then that means 55% of the kids had scores that were not in that range. Maybe they were above or probably they were below. But the schools realize that given the current circumstance, that a lot of students may not submit that test score, which they're fine by. But that brings us back to that essay. It means that essay is so
Is
much
so
more
much more
important.
important.
Yeah, so much more important, you know, because that really, between that, the GPA and the resume, well, those are the three pieces of information, the recommendations. There's the four pieces of
Yeah.
information they're going to have to review you. And so that essay needs to be compelling, it needs to be raw, it needs to be organic, and it needs to be real.
Yep.
And
Absolutely.
you know, I think the more honest you are and the more real you come across,
And I tell it has to be authentically you,
yeah,
and it's really about you as a deeper person, not what you've done, not your extracurriculars, not your, community service. It's got to be deeply about who you are as a person
and how you've evolved, you
and
know.
yeah, and what you've gone through since you were little. I mean, you can look back and find some experience maybe, and I can give examples of, students that we've helped and come up with an essay topic is one of the most important things. It may go back to an experience you had when you were a kid.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Or you know, or it may, and I think in many ways, the college essay is a time for people to reflect, maybe on things they haven't reflected on before. And a lot can come out of that, both from the application and just from this, you know, a self maturation standpoint.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's a strange year. Now, the other interesting part of this whole discussion is, of course, the interview, which, you know, has been poo-pooed by many over the past decade. But again, this year, what you're seeing, especially with the more competitive colleges, is they're offering kids the chance to interview. And again, from the research that we've done, what we've been seeing is you should sign up for interviews for your kid. Um, you know, it's incredibly important. You know, ideally, it's one on campus or in the field with someone from the admissions office. And then the second best thing is, of course, the alumni interview. But you know, if you want to have an interview with someone who's truly a decision maker, it's going to be somebody from that admissions office.
Yeah.
And again, like if you have children that are going through the college process, you know, you need to work with them on that interview. You know, you want to practice with them, um, record them while they're being interviewed by you, help
I
them
think
understand.
that's a really important thing that you don't realize.
Right.
Have them record themselves and
Yeah, because
see what they look like and hear what they sound like.
well, that's right. Because we all do something strange when we talk on camera, when we talk face to face, and we just don't realize it because we typically aren't used to watching ourselves. So just recording them responding to a question can be incredibly helpful in terms of helping them learn how to respond efficiently, helping them learn how to provide crisp, succinct answers. You know, my favorite thing about this generation is they say so like yeah. Instead of saying yes, they say so like yeah.
Like,
And I teach public speaking and I tell my students, I'm like, so you guys are the generation that says so like yeah instead of saying yes. And they all sort of laugh and then think about it. They're like, oh yeah, we do. And you don't really want them in an interview with their top school saying so like yeah and responding to a question.
personally, when somebody says like, it turns me off. Even just like.
Yeah. And you
Yeah.
know, in any sort of filler word like like none of them are good. we all have them periodically, but I've worked with students who literally will string like 10 filler words together and they still haven't expressed a thought. And
Yeah,
again, that's unfortunately that's kind of how this current generation, kind of the Gen Zs are
communicate.
wired. So it's
Yeah,
really, really important to try to work with them. And that's something that I do. I work with kids all the time on this kind of stuff. And if you don't want to hire a coach, parents can do it themselves. And you can, it doesn't have to be a 30-minute experience. It can be a 5-10 minute thing. Just have them practice getting crisp responses, focus on the body language, looking at people eye to eye, avoiding the filler words, and also letting their true personality come out. Because just like the essay,
absolutely.
you want people to be real.
Right. And one of my most favorite topics, if you're going into art school or music school or anything like that, if the college or the university has the opportunity to bring your portfolio and do an in-person presentation, present your work or present your audition or your face-to-face, do it. Because I think that the school really can get a sense of who you are so much more so than just submitting a recording or submitting, your artwork and uploading it to a site.
I
They
completely,
don't
completely.
really get to know who you are. And
That's
if you
right.
can go down and actually present it yourself, it's an amazing thing.
Well, in some schools, to your point on that one, some schools, like I know Tufts Art School, which is the SMFA school, they offer you the chance to do a preview of your portfolio with them online. So you can book a half-minute session with them. They'll look at your stuff
Which is
and give
great.
you feedback on your images, which is super, super helpful. And then I know also there's something called National Portfolio Day that, again, if you're looking at submitting some sort of portfolio, and it's virtual, they have virtual and in person this year. You can book a time to do the virtual one, and I think there's one coming up at the end of October. And there are 80 different schools from across the country that are going to be there. So, you know, whatever additional way your child can showcase who they are to that college or university that they're looking at, the better they're going to be, the more they're going to get to know them. And again, this is incredibly important if your child is
Especially
not
now.
submitting the
Yeah,
standardized test. Really, really
absolutely.
important. Yeah.
Absolutely. And it doesn't, I'm seeing kids also that, come in at, they're so disappointed with their test score. And I say to them, when they take an actual, either a practice test or their first test or something, I said, you have to keep your head in a positive place. You have to keep your head there, because the minute you start to down yourself or question yourself or any sort of negative self-talk, it's so important right now. Don't listen to what your friends are saying. Your friends are talking crapola. I mean, you don't even know if what they're saying is true, right? So you need to just focus on yourself. Focus on the fact that you may not have learned all the math, and maybe you have gaps from COVID. You're going to have gaps.
That's right.
So don't do a number on yourself at all. You just have to try to fill in those gaps and do the best you can. And if your test score doesn't come in a certain range, don't submit it.
That's right. I mean, it is as matter of fact as that. It really, really is. And the other thing is too, you know, a lot of people take the ACT or the SAT several times. So
Right. Right.
if you want to do that, it's okay. As Jessica's saying, don't be turned off by the kid who's like, oh, I took the SAT or the ACT once and I got a perfect score. That happens. It's rare, but it
It's
happens.
very rare.
You know,
But I'll tell you the other thing that I hear, and I've sat with girls and guys that are, their friends are in a different place than they are.
yep,
Their friends may have started test prep the summer after sophomore year. They're in a different place. You can't compare apples to oranges. This is different. You can't compare yourself to another kid, because they could be in a completely different place. And once we look at the details of, well, what math class are they taking?
right.
What level of English are they at? It's different. So you can't get down on yourself as a teen because your friend is. I had a girl whose friend was pushing her. You've got to do test prep now. You've got to do test prep now. She wasn't ready.
Right.
And I said, don't, your friend is in a different place. You have to tell her, I can't talk to you about this right now. It's hurting me. She was so upset
Well, that's
because she
right.
felt she wasn't She was behind the 8 ball. I said, you're not behind the 8 ball. You're fine.
Yes, that's right.
Don't freak out about it.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, and I mean, so much of it, to your point, depends upon where the student is math-wise. You know, some
Completely.
people can take the ACT or the SAT earlier because they've taken more advanced math classes. It
100%.
doesn't mean they're going to do better than you. It's just their timing. And so I think it's important. Everything is so case by case and everything is so personal, regardless of COVID, that
Absolutely.
COVID just made it a lot harder to kind of, do things the way that we want to do them. But it's getting better. It's certainly not perfect, but it's getting better. Um, so are you, Jessica, from what are you hearing from students in terms of, is school a lot harder than they thought it was going to be this year?
Yes. I think that they're not used to the amount of work that they're
Yeah,
getting. Um, they're back taking tests again. We've got a couple of college students actually right now, and the teachers are really pushing a lot of work. Um, it's like all of a sudden things are back to whatever old normal was, and the kids aren't used to it. The
right,
other thing that I noted that I was think is really important for parents to check out, especially in public school, that the requirements for graduation now for the graduating class of 2022, well, guess what? They're back to 2017 requirements. So I actually was going to post this on my Facebook page. You have to look because it had changed for, I believe, 2 graduating classes, and now it's back to, they have to take the standardized tests, the state standardized test to a certain level of math, which it says is algebra 1.
right.
They have to, or they have to take an SAT or an ACT and ASVAB, which is the military exam. So we have to closely look at what the requirements are, because who wants to, all of a sudden your kid's graduating and then they don't have the testing because they were caught in the middle of COVID transitioning back to, non-COVID requirements.
Yeah, it's not good.
It's
It's
not
not
good.
good and it's not fair. It really isn't fair.
So this
Um,
is the year 2022, where things are, they were in COVID, but now they're, it's sort of like now, and those are seniors that are in senior year, and now they're back to graduation requirements from 2017.
right, right.
So
Which
we
is
have to be really,
incredible.
really cognizant of that.
Yeah, so Jessica, what are your tips for parents who are having kids that are just kind of overwhelmed and stressed by what's going on right now? Any suggestions for how they can help their kids learn how to manage the
Yeah,
stress and adjust to I guess the
yeah,
old
I think it's what
reality?
I think it's what we talked about before, but now it's actually really happening, is we have to manage our expectations of what we expect of them. It goes along with the teachers, and if teachers of high school kids don't want to hear from parents, let me tell you. But if you find, or you hear, or your student hears, help them to advocate for themselves and say, look, I'm having a really difficult time with this, or ask for help. I tell kids all the time, ask for help if you need help. Don't let it get to the point where you're down to a C or a D and then we need to pull you out. It takes so much time and work to pull you out of the CD zone, even the F zone. Don't let it get to that point. Tell your parents that you need help, or look out, have the parent look out for that. Also, if you see that your kids are really stressed about all the work, they're going to need to take, even with the little kids, we talk about it, brain breaks. They're going to have to take breaks. You can't sit there for hours and hours at a time for an intense, they're going to have to come back and take a break and come back. So
Well,
break
I
it
think
out into little chunks of time as
yeah.
opposed to hours and hours and hours of study and homework.
Well, to your point, I think studying is more efficient when you break it into chunks because, especially like a teenager, like after about half an hour, 40 minutes, the attention span dives way down. I teach a three hour class, and we have to take breaks, not necessarily breaks from class, but we'll watch a TED talk, we'll
Yeah.
watch a speech, just to give them some sort of mental change, so that they don't get bored. And the other thing that you were talking about too is it's so important for kids to advocate for themselves. And it's a great lesson for college because in college, um, trust me when I tell you, professors do not expect nor do they want to hear from the parents. And I will say, in my 10 years of teaching, I've never heard from anybody's parent, and hopefully it never happens, um, because they're in college. They should
Well, I
be,
can tell you that we have two college students right now, and I'm hearing from their parents.
yeah,
And I said, this is just happening. And I said to her, listen, let your son speak directly to the tutor. You and I need to pull out of this. She said,
yep.
I was thinking the same thing. I said, well, you tell him to do that
Well, because
because
they have to learn to manage their time.
they have,
Yeah.
my opinion, they need to learn in middle school. They
Yes.
need to learn this in middle school is the ideal. The transition from fifth grade, sixth grade, or sixth, however your middle school starts, that's when they have to start learning it. And I just heard, I sat with this another Ridgewood student. Um, boy is in seventh grade, and he told me this is the first I heard about this. He said, I know my problem is I'm distracted. Now, another thing that I've heard is the teachers are going back to in class, but they're still using the tools that they used when they were back online. So I said,
Mm,
how do you get all your assignments? He said, I still get everything on Google Classroom. I said, really? That's interesting. The
yeah.
teachers are still using Google Classroom. Okay. He said, I really get distracted. I said, what is your biggest distraction? And you know what he told me? It's
What?
called it's called Google Chat. And I said, "Oh." He said the his school allows Google Chat on his Chromebook. I said, "Really?" And he goes, "You know how many kids are on Google on one of my chats? 150." I was like, "No wonder he's distracted. He gets these constant and this is on his school Chromebook." Now, I
Wow.
just spoke to another mom, same sort of thing, who said, no, I spoke to a tutor and she said in my classroom, in my school, we've disabled Google Chat.
Yeah.
And so now I'm talking to that mom about let's see if you can get Google Chat disabled for him
Disabled. Yeah.
because he knows it's a distraction, but he's in seventh grade and it's right there where he's working. And there's 150 kids all sending these chat messages. Of course, he's going to be distracted, and adults would be distracted,
Oh,
right?
that's terrible.
And I don't know whether the school realizes what an issue it is. But
That's
I'm sure
terrible.
I'm sure this mom will bring it to their attention, which I think is good.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's really horrible, I've got to say. Wow. Never occurred to me, but yeah, that is distracting.
Yep.
And
And
you
that's what's
say,
happening. And I didn't realize that, there's so much because Google Classroom in a lot of ways worked efficiently for the teachers, more efficiently during COVID, they're still using it.
well, I remember reading a statistic a while back about studying, and every time your kid is distracted while studying, they lose 9 minutes. So of what they learned. So they have to go back. It's almost like they have to rewind like where they were 9 minutes. And the problem is
Yeah,
when kids have their phones next to them and they're studying and they get a DM, a direct message from their friend, it distracts them. And
totally.
they thought they covered, such and such in whatever
And
subject.
they have to go
But then they
back.
got started. Yeah, they got to go back. And so I can only imagine in the classroom. I had an experience. It shows you how ineffective the online teaching is. I had a situation last year in a class of about 30 students. And when it came time for the final projects, there was one term that we had talked about several times during the semester, and the majority of them were online learning because they didn't feel like coming to class. And when it came time for the final and the final presentations, 5 of the 30 used the term incorrectly. And this was a
Wow.
concept we had talked about for 4 weeks in a row in the middle of
Wow.
the semester. And I paused one of them and I'm like, what did you just say? And the student was like, well, it means such and such. I'm like, you're so incredibly wrong. And then subsequently, a few of the other students did it. And so at the end of class, I said to them, I said, I hope that some of you learned something this semester. I said, obviously a bunch of you didn't. And I said, I know that you were all, online when I was teaching, but you clearly weren't paying attention. And I
They
feel
were
sorry
clearly
for you.
tuned out.
They were tuned out and they're wasting tuition dollars and they're wasting time and they're wasting effort. And to me, that's a shame because you shouldn't go to classes, you shouldn't go to college or high school or whatever it is if you're not going to try and you're not going to give
Yep.
yourself the opportunity to learn. And
The
it's,
other
it's
thing,
just
and it ties in with what you were saying, was taking notes.
yes.
If they're
Kids
not
should be
there and they're
taking notes.
checking out, are
Yep.
they taking notes? In fact, the kids hate to take notes. I don't care.
That's
They
right.
hate to take handwritten notes. If I meet a kid that's telling me that I'm taking handwritten notes, I said, I applaud you unbelievably,
Yep.
because that's how it reinforces the learning. A lot of them want to type their notes, which
It doesn't work.
it doesn't work.
Well, and the thing is, again, there's so much research that shows that when you physically write something down, you remember so much more. And I know I'm constantly writing things in notebooks and I have
Yep,
pieces of paper everywhere, but it's a way of remembering things. It's a way
yep,
and then sometimes I'll take those notes and type them into the computer to be part of a file or something, but I'm taking notes all the time on things. Um, and it really, really does help with your memory retention. So I think, if you have a student that's struggling in school right now, find out how what's their learning environment like. As you were
yes,
saying, do they have Google Chat on their computer? Do they have people DMing them on Instagram or Snap, which they shouldn't be doing? Ideally, your kid would leave their phone in their backpack on airplane mode, but we know that's not happening. So,
maybe leave it in another room.
yeah,
That's
exactly.
another, to your point. I just told a parent, one of the boys that I was talking to said he likes to work in his bedroom. And I said, as long as you're not in your bed or on your bed.
Correct.
He said, I'm at my desk. And this was really interesting. He said, I'm at my desk. And I said, what do you, and he said, I listen to music. I said, okay, what do you listen to? And he said, listen to this. I've never, rainy jazz. I was like, really? I said, what is that? He said, it's jazz. Well, he plays the saxophone, but he said, it's jazz music with rain in the background. He said, it relaxes me. I said, that is fabulous. I've never heard of such a thing.
I
So
love
the,
that.
and I know, I said, wow, this is unbelievable. And this was,
Yeah.
like an eighth grader.
Wow.
So he's found this. I don't know, maybe his music teacher shared it with him. What a fabulous thing. And I said, if that calms you and relaxes you and you can work in that environment, that's fantastic. He's found a way.
Well, again, the data, like I know I can't, I am not a big fan of silence. It sort of drives me nuts. Like I literally have to put something on, be it, usually it's music, but I'm not productive when it's too quiet. Unless I'm intensely studying, I'm not productive when it's quiet. So I need some sort of background music, but not like house party music, but more,
Yeah,
like slow jazz or, rock or acoustic music, whatever. It just helps me focus. And again, research shows that it actually helps to have some sort of comforting background music going on when you're studying. It does make people more productive. So if you have a student that likes to listen to rainy jazz or slow jazz or, classic rock
great.
with a
I
reason,
think it's
it's
great,
fine. And it
especially
actually
if it
might
relaxes
be
him.
yes, it actually might be the key to success. You don't want to have them watching a movie while they're trying to write their essay for English. Not productive. You don't want to have their computer constantly dinging with DM messages, not helpful. But if they have a place where they can go that's quiet, where they have a proper desk, and they can set their environment the way that it supports their studying, then that's fantastic.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, but
Um,
I think it's really important that they get out of the bedroom
yes,
unless they have a nice desk area in their room that they're okay, that they're not going to get distracted and go back to their bed. Because a lot of kids during COVID are used to zooming in their bed. It's
that's right.
so bad. It's so bad.
Well, and to your point, they've been in their bedrooms for the past 18 months. Like, especially now while the weather's nice, go outside. If you have an outside picnic table or a patio or whatever you have, like I constantly sit outside and work. I'll even do conference calls out there. People are like, is that a bird in the background? I'm like, yeah, it is. But just get outside, get some fresh air, get some vitamin D,
Yeah.
capitalize on it because, winter's going to be here soon and then we're all going to be inside again. And
Yep.
so, I think for parents, it's important to understand kind of what our kids' needs are right now, and to help them
Absolutely.
figure out if they have to re-engineer some stuff, how they can do that to be more effective. And if they need help with a teacher, as we've been saying, they have to advocate. Don't you do it, have your child do it.
Absolutely.
Um,
100%.
and if they're nervous talking to people face to face, have them send an email. It's totally
Well,
fine.
that I think the initial way we always start with them is send an email. I mean, I have tutors that literally help their students how to formulate an email. You
Yeah,
know, some of them think that you have to put the whole thing in the subject. No, here's what the subject should say. You know what I'm
right.
saying? How do you formulate an email to a teacher?
Yeah.
and they need help with that. Don't assume that your kids know how to do that, but don't do it for them. Show them how to
Correct.
do it.
That's right. That's right.
Because
Coach
that's
them on
like
one
you
or
said,
two, and
that's
then
what the teachers want to see. The teachers
that's right.
want to hear from the kids.
Well, that's right. And again, as a parent, you're only helping the kid because you're preparing them for when they go to college or university or wherever they go next. So yeah, it's an important time. It's a challenging time for everybody. And I think we all have to don't be critical of our kids, be supportive of them,
Be supportive
and
and
help.
open, because we don't know what they're going through. I mean, we're going through a lot,
Yes,
but we don't know. And not only, let's talk about social emotional learning. They're back in school with friends that they had that some of them they haven't seen for what, 15, 18 months.
that's right.
And there's a lot of social pressure about that. Who knows who's friends anymore? Who knows how my friend who was my friend is going to treat me?
That's right.
That's a
That's right.
whole nother aspect of what I think adds to social pressure.
Yeah, absolutely. And adding on to that, like I think a lot of some kids change schools, so a friend group may have gotten split up, which can be a big deal for students.
Absolutely.
So again, as parents, like we just have to be aware of that, and patient and supportive, and help our kids try to figure out like what do they want to do, how do they want to navigate this next year, and try to support them in whatever way possible that we can.
Absolutely.
All right, Jessica, thank you for another
Thank you,
lovely
Catherine, for having us for our conversation, and look for us again,
our education conversation.
our
Yes.
education conversation.
And we'll do another one at some point on another topic that relates to education right now. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me through presentingperfection.com. And Jessica, what's your website?
Tutordoctor.com/Bergen-Rockland. That is us.
Perfect. All right, everybody, have a great day. Bye
Thank
bye.
you. Have a good one.